So Amir, like I said, he is really kicking in on a lot of stuff here. Great work by him, and also great work on Cammy's model. And in reference to that, Jaron, I wanted to show something that you sent to me just yesterday, um, which is amazing. As many of you know, we are working on our map, and one of the things that we posited was the idea that Antarctica was actually split and in two physical locations. And lo and behold, Jaron, being the amazing researcher that he is, dug this picture out of God knows where he got it. But as you can see, it has the base construct of what Cami and I were starting with, in this background grid. And like our version 1.0 map, it's almost identical to the 1.0 map, but the problem with the 1.0 map, again, is this traversal from Santiago to Sydney. We know that we have to be able to do it within 13 hours because they have flights that do that. So it's amazing that this is even out there, and also that it's using a very similar grid pattern, but it also is not realistic to assume that the powers that be are ever going to let us have any type of map that shows the reality of the Earth. So even though this particular map has a stunning similarity, especially in the background grid pattern, I can tell you right away there are a few major issues with this map. But the thing I found about it was amazing is that they took, and just like we said was a necessary step, it looks like this prime meridian line looks like it's been shifted to go through Giza rather than Greenwich, for one. For two, we're showing Antarctica split in two main sections, left and right. Very interesting also. Um, and we have these grid lines that are actually showing what the magnetic compass would read if you were actually tracking it. And of course, when you look at this, it does put Hawaii back up here off the map. And it really has a lot of similarities to Cami's and my 1.0 map. Now, when we first showed our map to Jaron's reaction was, well, we seem to have some problems still with flight times and navigation, and he made the suggestion of essentially doing something that should have been almost obvious to us because of what we know about the satanic nature of the powers that be. And one thing that they absolutely do is they reverse things, or they flip them upside down, or invert them, or whatever. And so one of Jaron's suggestions, when he was kind of nonchalantly talking about this, is like, it might work better if you actually flip this upside down and then maybe reverse it from side to side, and that's going to bring these lines of force in a little bit closer, which are going to bring the probability and possibility and reality of being able to make the Santiago to Sydney flight come together. And sure enough, when Cami did that, we looked at each other and went, wow, that's amazing. But the reason I'm showing you this, guys, is because somebody else has obviously been thinking along these lines. And although this is not accurate, this is a very, very similar construct to what we're trying to achieve. And I'll even go so far as to show this, which, as you can see, when you look at this and our grid in the background, which was derived completely separate of this, you see a stunning similarity in the two. Now, this one has been reversed, and we are still in the process of plotting the continents, the cities down the coastline. East and west are reversed. Now, I also want people to remember that when I say that, the satanic powers that be reverse things, turn everything upside down, one good example of that is, our geographic North Pole is literally our magnetic South Pole and vice versa, okay? Beyond that, we know that what they're calling the South Atlantic anomaly is not commensurate with a pole, and even they will admit that the South Pole is much closer to 60, I believe, 7 degrees south. Okay, and again, south is north, north is south, whatever, and it's all meant to confuse, very intentional. So this is a kind of a flip over of the grid system. And when we plot these continent lines, and I know you probably can't see this very well, but like I said, a larger map is coming. You can see Cammy's scribblings on here, where he has Juneau, or she has Juneau, Nome, uh, Bruce, well, anyway,
How about
Alaska.
Barrow?
Barrow, okay,
That's Barrow, Alaska. What these are is they're actual using coordinates, the longitude and latitude coordinates. And on the maps, as I do this and I'm trying to get the alignment right, what I am doing is I physically go to the coordinates of these places, plot dots, check their sunsets, their sunrises, their visuals, what the distance is between cities, all different things, squish it, redo it again and again on that, trying to get my aspect ratio. So it's very messy, but we're getting really fine-tuned in actually for as messy as it looks, where it's coming along. Doesn't look like it, but again, once I have things lined up right, it's a matter of you can plot in the outline cities of continents and draw the outlines or draw it in.
right.
Go ahead, Bob.
And also, you'll notice that Hawaii, of course, comes down here along the 180 line because, like you said, when you move the prime meridian from Giza, excuse me, from Greenwich to Giza, that also changes the international date line where the new day would start to Hawaii. And their mythology would be very much in accordance with that idea for sure. So I just kind of wanted to throw this in here. Again, we're still working on it. We've got Amir who's doing a great job in making modifications to these grids. It's very crude right now, but the reason that we have it in this state and are plotting it in this state is because every time we make an adjustment, with another factoring and another part of the magnetic lines of force, it will change the entire construct of the map. So you change one little thing here, it changes everything there, but there will eventually be a sweet spot where everything flies, and I have to tell you, we're very close to that, very, very close to that. So again, this is the crude translation of what we're working on, what you're seeing here, and this is somebody else's finished project that I don't know where it came from, Jaron. Maybe you can fill us in on that, but it uses a very similar type of idea, and I thought that was absolutely amazing. I love Nathan Oakley's comment on this. He said it looks like the Starship Enterprise. I was like, yeah, it kind of does. The left and the right little circles here look like the warp nacelles, and of course the saucer section of the disk, but whatever. Neither here nor there. I just thought it was kind of funny that he said that.
Yeah, I've
So
got a huge folder of old maps that I've been looking at. So I don't remember where it came from exactly, but I think down on the left-hand side, doesn't that say the name of either the site or the brand? Something about the Future Mapping Company.
I don't know. Let's see. Maybe I can blow it up here.
And so yeah, and I don't know if people understood what you meant, but when you do swap the two sides, the sinu-molide projection says it's an equal area fusion of the I can't really.
Moloweed and sinusoidal projections.
Okay, so when you swap those, then you've got the flights going the correct direction. This map here, we could look at. Pull it back out, Bob.
Okay.
Please do. Am I on or no?
You're on.
Okay.
You're on, but you're not presenting.
Okay. Nope. Okay.
So if we know that, like Max Egan went from Santiago, Chile to Sydney, and we know he flew west. So looking here, I was kind of saying, I don't know how that's obviously not going to work. But when you flip them, then all of a sudden you've got them flying west. And I don't mean flip them and leave. Obviously, you don't leave Africa there, but you flip them, and then that would move everything kind of opposite where everything is, meaning Hawaii would come down. But then you have people going the right direction. You have the flights are a lot shorter than we think. So obviously, there's much more to do with it. But I definitely think it is leading us in the right direction.
Okay, can you put the other map back up, Bob?
Sure. Let's go back to, gosh, where is it? There we go.
Or just the grid lines? Okay, now what is very counterintuitive about this map, and Jaron, you did the flip on it. If you look over here, Australia or Sydney, Bob, can you point to Sydney, Australia in the bottom left of the map?
Right here. Hopefully you
So
can see
your
me circling
eastern,
that.
if you're looking at it, your east actually, you'll travel east to west, but on the map, it feels very counterintuitive. So if you were to go west from Sydney to Santiago, show Santiago, Jaron, that's what you corrected over the ocean. The corrections made are actually, if you show Santiago here,
Right, I'm circling it.
you're circling it. And if you do, now do your flight from Sydney to Santiago, Jaron, and find the mistakes, please.
Oops, Darren, you're muted.
Oh, well, there's none.
There is none. In other words, yeah, the corrections, when we get it mapped out nicely on that, you'll see, and if you look at like time distances, we're getting pretty close in here, flight times, and that between cities, things are really starting to line up a lot.
And then what you'll notice is if you do any flight tracking, and this is something a lot of the flights are tracked between South America and Australia. There's a lot of those flights that go back and forth there, but you won't find a lot of flights from South America to Africa and Australia to Africa.
Those
Usually
are your long flights.
Huh?
Those are your longest flights. You're right. If you're looking at the flights, your flights to South Africa are your longest flights, not your
Right.
Sydney to Santiago.
And they always have a connection, and
Yes.
that's why you've seen people before when you take a look at the azimuthal equidistant, and you notice that a lot of flights make more sense on the azimuthal equidistant. No, I'm not promoting that map. I'm saying that when you use that map, flights can take a straight line path, meaning why would you go on a globe from, say, Brazil to Japan, or let's say Brazil to San Francisco to Japan, or whatever? You're basically shooting way up the globe, then coming way back down. And none of those flights make sense. And you see a lot of that. They'll go from Australia to India, then to Africa. And so you don't see just the Australia to Africa. And that's because if you kind of look at what we're looking at now, the big distance would be up top, meaning Africa would be up top, above the circle here. And there would be a rare flight, you would hit the middle first. So you would take off from the right side, go to somewhere in the middle, and then shoot up to Africa. You would never go from this right side all the way around to Africa. So it really starts to fit what I'm seeing. And I've got a site that I use a lot called Radar 24. I've got basically a flight map and flight tracker, and watching these flights, that's why I'm learning. So you want to know where MH370 is, it's somewhere way up top here. And because they don't have satellite, and it's such a vast amount of ocean up there, that it got lost. They don't have satellites to track the flights up there, and it's something that they probably knew was an inherent risk the entire time, which is that, hey, if we ever lose a flight in the Southern Ocean, in between basically Australia and South America, that unless it's over Africa, we're going to lose that flight. And it happened. It was bound to happen that something happened on a plane. I don't know if the person fell asleep or he was trying to commit suicide, whatever it was. That flight wasn't tracked and crashed into this huge, vast upper ocean. Whereas if you think about it, the way that they describe it, that's a small ocean at the bottom of the globe. That should be a small little ocean, and they still can't find that plane. The reason why is because it's a huge amount of ocean. And again, that's where you go back to Magellan going around the world, and it taking him 3 years, and he went 50,000 miles. Now, if they told us that, people would say, time out, the equator is 25,000 miles. How does it take twice that distance to get around? Well, it's because he had to go around the Southern Ocean up there, which is going to be a huge amount of uncharted territory that would have taken them a lot of miles in a long time.
Yes, very much. You're right. So, anyway, let me kind of give people a little bit of an idea of what's going on with these lines. As we have talked about before, and many people have asked the question, well, how is it that I can go around the Earth and and meet myself flying one direction and come right back to where we have started from? Well, again, this is because when you navigate, and I am a pilot, and I can tell you that this is absolutely the way we are told to navigate, we always default to the compass as being the primary source of navigation information. We even calibrate our gyroscopic instruments to the compass. But if you assume then on the flat Earth, and this right here in the center, this little black dot in the center, is Mount Meru or whatever, it's the North Pole, and you have a compass that the needle is pointing towards it, if you take off and you start going west, well, what's going to happen is the North Pole is going to start falling further and further behind you. So in order to keep that needle going north, you're going to have to compensate with on that compass, and you're going to have to make constant adjustments. So what you're doing really as you continue flying west, in order to keep that compass needle to the west, as you pull away from the north, you're going to be forced to go around in a circle so that you can keep that compass needle constantly pointing west, or conversely east if you're going in the opposite direction. This is what's actually happening when you're navigating. Now, when we look at this and understand that people are navigating via the magnetic lines of force, then what this map has done is extrapolated those lines out, okay, the lines of force out. So in other words, if I'm flying from Santiago to Sydney, or this direction, and I say, well, I definitely want to fly either east or west, depending on which direction I'm going. If we're doing that with reference to the north, we're actually going to be making a large arc up towards the top of the map and then coming back down as we're flying with reference to magnetic north, okay? So what's happening here is if you take that flight and you fly that normally, you would again be taking this extended route, which is a lot more distance. But what they're doing, and I believe this is actually what is happening, is when they are flying from Santiago to Sydney, they are not necessarily using the magnetic compass as a reference, more so as they are doing dead reckoning via the gyroscopic instrument on the plane. And when you do that, you forget about the lines of force and you fly directly from this point, Sydney, to this point, Santiago, and you have not gone with those magnetic flow lines. You've effectively cut straight across them, which significantly reduces the distance that you would have to be traveling. And I believe that the very few flights that they have, the pilots are either aware of this, or they're simply told, or they're simply following flight computer, which has been programmed by somebody for them to whatever, I don't know. But nevertheless, when we plot this out on our map and you get away from going with the magnetic lines of force, you shave off several thousand miles across that journey, and you're able to then take the shortest distance between 2 points, which is dead reckoning across. Conversely, we have all been told about the lands beyond the poles, okay? And again, in this map, we've got Hawaii down here, but we've said that if you keep dead reckoning north, and I realize this is upside down, you will eventually break out of that magnetic construct and magnetic reference, and you will, oops, sorry, my phone's ringing. You will go beyond these magnetic constructs, and you will arrive at literally a land beyond the poles. Admiral Byrd talked about it. He said that there was a land as large as the United States, if not larger, beyond the Antarctic continent. Well, how is that possible if we're on a ball? Was he full of crap? Or he seemed pretty sane to me when he was doing that interview. Or you have the quote-unquote legends or myths or whatever of the land beyond the North Poles that Mercator himself documented, as well as many other ancient day sailors. And there's a lot of information in this. So to say that, and it's also, anyway, to say that we're on a ball and that we are confined to this circular orbit, when you realize that we're on a flat plane, then you have to ask yourself, well, then what is beyond these poles? What exactly? There must be something behind it. It's certainly not an edge that you're going to fall off into space, because we're not traversing through space as you would know it. My belief, and this is my belief only, and my opinion, is that we are on an infinite type of plane construct. Maybe the circles or the puddles and every other area outside of us would have their own sun and moon circling, just like in our construct. And people ask where they would be taking all this stuff that they would be allegedly quarrying. if they're indeed doing that. Well, maybe they're taking the precious material and the elites are taking it to these infinite number of lands beyond the poles and setting up some other type of utopian society for themselves. I don't know. That's my opinion. That's my idea. It may or may not be true, but I think that, no matter what you think, if you think we're on an infinite plane, it would seem to me that it's very illogical to think that once we get to the edge, we're going to fall off into space.
That's the
That just
model they
doesn't
want
fly.
people.
Yeah, that's what they want you to believe. That's for damn sure.
Hey,
But
Bob, share my screen real quick so I can show people what you're talking about.
you
I kind of drew something real quick here.
betcha. Let me and present to everyone. Gotcha. You're up.
Okay, so what I think he's saying is, oops, that's way too big. So if you can't tell what this is, this would be Africa up here, and you've got the United States here, South America here. This would be part of Antarctica here, the one section. This would be the other one over here. And when these start to make sense, when you look at everything from Australia goes down to Antarctica this way, or you can go to South America and go here. But rarely do you hear anything about Africa going to Australia. I'm sorry, to Antarctica this way. And you wouldn't, if you had a compass with you, people might say, well, what do you mean, what's down here? How do you get down here? Well, you wouldn't go down there because they've set up the GPS. So the GPS makes sure that you stay in this area. That's all. You're controlled by GPS. You're not controlled by water. Meaning, if you started going out from here, who knows what would happen if you actually just went out this way? Who would know? But nobody would ever do that because they're going to be following their compass. And the compass is going to keep you home. It's going to keep you here because as you start going, you're going to turn your boat based on where the compass is telling you, where GPS tells you. And that's how easy it is for them to fool you or to fool us, because we are just going to stay within the what we think is the boundaries. So, a Santiago to Sydney flight is suddenly just here. And if you think of this circle being 25,000 miles, so then you look at this and you say, and I just drew this, this is obviously not anywhere near correct, but let's say it's a diameter. So you're talking about 8,500 miles or whatever the diameter is, 7,959, right? So now you're talking about that's only 7,500 miles. Now all of a sudden it's an easy trip. It's 13 hours. That would be 600 miles per hour. Easy. I actually see the plane, when I am watching the tracking of that flight, it actually gets up over that 600-mile mark a lot. So, and by the way, when that plane does, if you watch that plane, no matter what, it will start here and it will come off of Santiago and it will get about here and it disappears from the radar. And you don't see it come back until it gets here. And that's because this is too vast of an area for them to cover with their no satellite faking butts. And when you talk about MH370, that left wherever over here and went out this way, and who knows where it went out here? Who would know where it would go? But they certainly can't tell you if it doesn't if it doesn't exist in your reality. How are they going to tell you? Oh, we found it here. Oh, what's the GPS location? Well, guess what? It doesn't fall in the GPS location that they've taught us exists. So they can't tell you where the plane is. Even if they found it, they can't tell you because it doesn't exist in your reality. It doesn't exist in my reality. We think we live in a finite place, that we have to stay within here. And that's what they did. Once they found all this out, it would have been very easy for them to mathematics. It's not very hard for these people that are math majors to draw up a mathematical system that tells you you're on a globe, that has boundaries to where you can go. And, I can't even say that anybody would be smart enough to get around it because you would be out here completely lost if you tried to sail out here, because what are you going to go off of? If you don't have GPS, you just have to, if let's say that this is the North Pole, and so your compass always points north, okay? But you don't know without GPS if you're here, if you're here, if you're here. How would you know the difference? You wouldn't, because your compass is going to be pointing you north. Here's your
Right.
compass.
This is where the idea of using a gyroscopic type of navigation is the only way that you could do this, because gyros stay rigid in space and they will give you a direction that will not be changing,
Right.
as opposed to any magnetic thing. So if you're going to navigate this, you need a gyro. It's as simple as that. So
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, we just have GPS devices and we think they're great and they tell me exactly where I'm at when I'm in the USA, I know if I'm going south here, if I know if I'm going north, or if I'm going towards Bob here. This will keep very good track for me of exactly where I'm at. But if this world, and again, I'm not saying this is true. I don't know the layout of the world. I would be an idiot to say that I did. I have no idea what the layout is. But I do know that things don't work on a globe. And so this starts to make more sense. And when you see somebody like Magellan that took off from here, and they went down here, went around oops, I'm sorry, that's not where they started. They started here in Europe. They went down here and around South America and went through the Magellan, or the Magellan Strait, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they went this way, so they had all this land to go through. Then they came back up here and came home. Well, this makes more sense now when it takes 50,000 miles. It's twice as big as this yellow line, which is 25,000 miles. So things start to make more sense. And when you talk about these people like Captain Cook, completely lost when they're out there trying to navigate these waters, and they were getting upset, they were getting frustrated. I would too, because what you've been told is a lie. So when you start trying to follow your compass, they were probably coming out here and going here, and they kept getting, according to him, an ice wall as far as you could see, right and left. Now again, that a lot of that information has been suppressed, so we don't know where this ice wall is. How would we know? You know, we'd have to go and investigate it, but they certainly haven't told us the truth. So what Bob's saying is there could be an ice wall here, but maybe it ends here. Who knows? So maybe this,
Jared,
huh? Yeah.
I have a theory on where the ice wall is. The ice wall would be, it touches the parts of Antarctica as if you have on the both, but it would be mapped out by the sun's path and where the melt it would be. In other words, you would have to see how far you're reaching until you run out of enough warmness to keep the ocean melted.
Good point. And that's what, yeah, and
that's the where I am working with on this map is I'm extrapolating it out mathematically from that point of view.
okay. And then one of the cool things about that book, and if you want to listen to John read it, I know Morgile reads the book, The Iron Republic. And what happened in that book is a guy who lost an election or something leaves New York and starts going down here, and he gets down to what he thinks is the Antarctica, so he hits the ice wall here, and he goes up to a mountaintop here and looks behind him to the south and says he sees open water. And he's very confused because there shouldn't be water here. He's very confused as to why would there be water there. So they said, well, let's sail around and keep going and see if we can find an inlet. So they started sailing around, and sure enough, they found a hole. So basically there was a wall like this, and there was a channel that they were able to go into, and when they went into, there was such a rush of water that they were carried, they couldn't have turned around if they wanted to. And when they came out the other side, there was a bunch of open water. They sailed for 3 months, and then they found the Iron Republic, which was a new continent of land. They said they knew about the other side of the ice wall. They knew about the United States. They had met people from there before, but they don't converse with us because we're all Cretans, and they don't have the same kind of rules we do. They're technologically advanced, and it's a great book to read. It was written in 1903. The guy's talking about futuristic, like a subway system, and their transportation, speakerphones, and all the devices that we have. They're talking about it in 1903. It's an incredible book to read. I'm not saying it's true, but then that leads me to thinking too that every once in a while, if the sun gets closer or the area starts getting hot, do we have sections in this ice wall that open up, meaning they kind of melt, an icebreaker or an iceberg crashes, so now you've got a channel here. Well, then the government would care an awful lot about global warming. They would want to stop any warming of the planet because it's going to open an ice wall. It's going to open a channel, and if somebody sees that in this day of age with the media, the internet and stuff like that, somebody would report, hey, there's a channel here, and there's water on the other side, and then we would realize maybe, and I'm not saying this is true again, but if our sun stays here, going this way, sorry, our sun stays here, there could be another sun that goes here, meaning this ice wall is protecting, is just like they talk about pocket theory. Again, I don't have any evidence of that, so I'm not saying that it's the truth. I'm saying this is why we're exploring this, and this is why we need more people out researching this stuff, because it's a possibility, and it's not strange to think that this would be possible. It's very easy. The people who come back and say, well, how does GPS work, you idiot? It's like, I'm explaining to you how GPS works, and I'm explaining to you how it's keeping your mind trapped in a little world that they've created for you. That's great. Absolutely. If you want to live there. Go ahead, live there.
Yeah, there's one other thing also that I want to mention. Somebody asked in the chat before we had GPS, how did people navigate? And I want you to look at Jaren's screen here and the grid behind it, which is just what I was showing you on Cammie's drawing, and also what they were showing in the other drawing that Jaren found. You see the grid there? Let me tell you where we got that grid. Well, first of all, let me answer the question. How did they navigate before they had GPS? Well, by the stars, okay? They navigated by the stars, and what this grid is and where we got this grid was from mainstream sources that actually show the intensity and the magnitudes of the stars, which would indicate in our model, of course, the closeness of them. And so this grid behind here is a representation of that very thing. And like I said before, the reason that they separated, or the reason that they changed the prime meridian grid, or the prime meridian, longitude, is because when you shift it 30 degrees from Giza, where it should have been and belongs, 30 degrees to Greenwich, then you've got a misalignment of the stars as compared to reference points on the ground. Okay, so that was just another thing that they did to throw us off track here. But this grid pattern is absolutely taken from mainstream science. We linked the reference to it in our show a few weeks back, where we got it from, how it was extrapolated. This was done by, like I said, mainstream astronomers. And so this grid is basically, we're taking the map of the stars, if you will. We're correcting for the little 30-degree shift that the Masons put in the prime meridian, and we're laying that grid right down on the plane. And bada bing, when you do that, and of course reverse it and flip it upside down according to the Satanist way, and then you start placing these continents on here, all of a sudden you're going, holy cow, this map works. And this is where we're going with that. So there's your answer. Before GPS, they used the stars, and this is derivative of the star map. So there you have it.
Yeah, and so, it doesn't. When I say it doesn't do any kind of portal, it's because the portal map, which I liked Free Energy's map. I looked at it a lot, but I saw that basically if you have a square map, and they have, this was the portal, right? You could go this way and come out here, and it made sense to me originally because I said, okay, well, if we're going this way, it's the same as me coming from this way, meaning we kind of exist everywhere, meaning I'm going this way, yes, but I'm coming out here, and it made sense to me. But this is the problem with this map, is where is this happening? Where is the person coming north coming out south? Well, if you look into, just look up north-south navigations, you will see all the time people that go from, they'll fly down here from America to South America to, say, Brazil, and then they'll fly to 90 degrees, and they fly, and they hit 90 degrees, and they always come back. This is how they go around the North Pole and the South Pole. Nobody has ever gone north to south, yet people, how many flights are there a day that do this? Thousands of flights that go like this all day long. They do this nonstop, but nobody goes north to south. Well, in this map here, it's impossible. So it makes sense that you wouldn't be able to go north to south. Look at any north-south navigation. It says it takes them 20 days, or because what they're doing is they're getting down to where they think is 90, and then they come back. They come back this way, and they go up here to the North Pole, and then they say, there it is. I just went around the world north to south. But you went to the South Pole and came back. You didn't go South Pole and go over, because your compass would have gotten confused. You would have been lost over here. So they get to that 90 degrees, and think about if you had a compass and you got to this point, that you're being told you're at 90 degrees, and your compass is telling you that way's north. Well, you're not going to be able to keep going this way. The compass is forcing you to turn around. You have no other choice. You keep going this way, your compass is going to keep telling you north is behind you. You're going to say, but I crossed 90 degrees. How do I? North should be this way. But you don't live on a ball. So you are stuck as a pilot, as a navigator. You don't have a choice to just say, screw it, I'm not going to pay attention to my compass. I'm just going to keep going. Because, as I believe, the sun is over here, so the further you go this way, the colder and more impossible it's going to get to even see. This is just going to be sleet and snow. And a lot of people ask me about meteoroids and comets and what do I think meteors are. It wouldn't surprise me if there is a bunch of icy mountains out here. Icy mountains, huge ones, and for whatever reason, pieces of chunks are flying into our area. Who knows? But that's what meteors are. They're icy chunks of ice. That's what they tell you they are, and metal, which would be fine if they're out here and they're just flying in. I don't know for what reason. Don't ask me. I'm just giving you an idea of what could be happening. There's ulterior ideas that match our reality equal to or more than the globe model. The globe model just doesn't make sense. It doesn't jive with me. It doesn't match my reality. It doesn't make sense. Why can't somebody just fly today from New York? I want to see them fly from New York over the North Pole, go down underneath the globe, and come right back over here. But that doesn't happen. Try and find it. You won't. And if you look it up for like the Guinness Book of World Records, who has the record for north-south circumnavigation, it's Sir something something. He's a cousin of the Queen of England, and he's a Freemason, and it took them like 4 months. And the description of what they did was basically like go up here, meander around this way, and then come down here, and then come back up here. And they say this is around the globe. Again, I'm looking at a flat map, so it doesn't make sense that I'm showing that. But it's not the same as it would be on a globe. And we don't go over, they say it's too cold to go over Antarctica in a plane. That's ridiculous. The ground temperature doesn't have anything to do. And then just look at the different, for instance, look at the 14 of the top 15 hottest temperatures. They're all in the north, right here. This is where your 14 of your 15 hottest temperatures are. Nothing down here. There's one Australia temperature that registered in the south that is in the top 15. Everything else is in the north. It makes sense on a flat Earth because your sun is staying between the tropic here and here. So your sun is in this path here all the time. So this would be the hottest area. Now, if it was on a globe, remember the sun is 3 million miles closer in the south summer. So that means that your hottest temperatures should all be in the south. There's no reason why any temperature should hit the north and be hotter than the south. We don't see that at all. Doesn't make any sense. Why is there tons of plants, animals, trees, forests, rivers, all kinds of stuff in this band, but in this same exact band out here, nothing? Go ahead and go look at the areas out here and try and find plant life. Try and find, they're just not there. It's not equal to, look at 70 degrees north versus 70 degrees south. They're completely different. But that makes sense on this map. Let somebody try and explain it to you. They'll start saying, well, it's because of the temperature of the water and there's more land here, so this land heats up. And no, that's not, there's as much land here as there is here or here. So it doesn't make, why is Death Valley the hottest temperature there ever was and not somewhere in Australia? What would be the reason for that? If they're, and I don't know if I'm just saying those off the top of my head, they might not be at equal latitudes. But if you found whatever Nevada is, Death Valley is California, whatever the degrees longitude is here, check that same area south of that, and you should have equal temperatures. Actually, it should be more in the south because the sun is 3 million miles closer, but we don't see that. So those are questions that people should ask and say, there's something wrong with the globe model. It doesn't fit reality, but people want to keep fighting it and stay trapped in their little globular world. It's a toy, not a place to live.
Yep, exactly. And very well said. So yeah, I mean, how else can this be presented? We presented it a multitude of ways, and again, people go ahead and go out there and check this stuff for yourself. We're planting seeds, and that's the whole idea here. We're planting seeds. We're sharing with you our research, and this is where we're going with it.
And if I'm wrong, I want to know. Tell me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell me. Please email me and say, this is why that idea doesn't work. We don't see this. We do see that. But what I get is I get globers who just make videos and laugh and say, well, of course we go north-south. This one person did it. It's in this Wikipedia article. Well, if that's the research you want to do, then you don't understand deception. Then you don't get how somebody would deceive you. And I do. I understand that there's methods somebody could take to deceive me by, like, I don't know, telling me I can see the ISS, but only at night. And at night, I can't see myself from the ISS. But I can see myself from the ISS during the day, but I can't see it during the day. That's called deception. That's not realistic. That's deception. Show me where I'm at. Let me see myself at night. You can have a camera up there that looks down at the city lights. You show me all kinds of pretty city light pictures in Google search, but you can't do that live.
Pole and vice versa. Okay. Beyond that, we know that what they're calling the South Atlantic anomaly is not commensurate with a pole, and even they will admit that the South Pole is much closer to 60, I believe, 7 degrees south. Okay. And again, south is north, north is south, whatever. And it's all meant to confuse, very intentional. So this is a kind of a flip over of the grid system. And when we plot these continent lines, and I know you probably can't see this very well, but like I said, a larger map is coming. You can see Cammie's scribblings on here, where he has Juneau, or she has Juneau, Nome, Bruce. Well, anyway, Alaska.
Barrow.
Barrow, okay.
That's Barrow, Alaska. What these are is they're actual using coordinates, the longitude and latitude coordinates. And on the maps, as I do this and I'm trying to get the alignment right, what I am doing is I physically go to the coordinates of these places, plot dots, check their sunsets, their sunrises, their visuals, what the distance is between cities, all different things, squish it, redo it again and again on that, trying to get my aspect ratio. So it's very messy, but we're getting really fine-tuned in actually for as messy as it looks, where it's coming along.
When he was kind of nonchalantly talking about this, is like, it might work better if you actually flip this upside down and then maybe reverse it from side to side, and that's going to bring these lines of force in a little bit closer, which are going to bring the probability and possibility and reality of being able to make the Santiago to Sydney flight come together. And sure enough, when Cammie did that, we looked at each other and went, wow, that's amazing. But the reason I'm showing you this, guys, is because somebody else has obviously been thinking along these lines. And although this is not accurate, this is a very, very similar construct to what we're trying to achieve. And I'll even go so far as to show this, which, as you can see, when you look at this and our grid in the background, which was derived completely separate of this, you see a stunning similarity in the two. Now this one has been reversed, and we are still in the process of plotting the continents, the cities down the coastline. East and west are reversed. Now I also want people to remember that when I say that, the satanic powers that be reverse things, turn everything upside down, one good example of that is, our geographic North Pole is literally our magnetic South Pole, Earth. So even though this particular map has a stunning similarity, especially in the background grid pattern, I can tell you right away there are a few major issues with this map. But the thing I found about it was amazing is that they took, and just like we said was a necessary step, it looks like this prime meridian line looks like it's been shifted to go through Giza rather than Greenwich, for one. For two, we're showing Antarctica split in two main sections, left and right, very interesting also. And we have these grid lines that are actually showing what the magnetic compass would read if you were actually tracking it. And of course, when you look at this, it does put Hawaii back up here off the map. And it really has a lot of similarities to Cammie's and my 1.0 map. Now, when we first showed our map to Jaren's reaction was, well, we seem to have some problems still with flight times and navigation. And he made the suggestion of essentially doing something that should have been almost obvious to us because of what we know about the satanic nature of the powers that be. And one thing that they absolutely do is they reverse things, or they flip them upside down, or invert them, or whatever. And so one of Jaron's suggestions, so Amir, like I said, he is really kicking in on a lot of stuff here. Great work by him, and also great work on Cammy's model. And in reference to that, Jaron, I wanted to show something that you sent to me just yesterday, um, which is amazing. As many of you know, we are working on our map, and one of the things that we posited was the idea that Antarctica was actually split and in two physical locations. And lo and behold, Jaron, being the amazing researcher that he is, dug this picture out of God knows where he got it. But as you can see, it has the base construct of what Cami and I were starting with, in this background grid. And like our version 1.0 map, it's almost identical to the 1.0 map, but the problem with the 1.0 map, again, is this traversal from Santiago to Sydney. We know that we have to be able to do it within 13 hours because they have flights that do that. So it's amazing that this is even out there, and also that it's using a very similar grid pattern, but it also is not realistic to assume that the powers that be are ever going to let us have any type of map that shows the reality of